Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation to kick off after lunch, and I think maybe it would be great to have Dr. Mehring on the cooking channel or something. It's the next gig, right? Well, my name is Thrupp, and I'm the new executive director at the Berkeley Food Institute, which probably some of you have heard about. It's been developed over a number of months, partly with the leadership of Claire Kremen, who's here today, Professor Kremen. And it involves collaboration with the School of Public Health, the School of Conservation of Natural Resources, and School of Law, Public Policy, and Journalism. And we're very excited to have lots of people around the campus involved and interested. It's really a great time to be bringing so many people who are involved in doing research and also community activities engaged in together to develop this institute. I might also say that I'm brand new, so I've just been here for 6 weeks now, but I actually am coming back to Berkeley. I was a postdoc here a lot of years ago, and I've been working for more than, about 25 years in this whole area of sustainable agriculture and food systems and agroecology. And I've had the fortune to really have a very diverse background and always using a systems approach, but worked in research, education, also the public and private sector. And most recently was with an organic farming business, actually out in the field very often with organic growers and helping people to convert to organic and sustainable production practices. So been out in the dirt and enjoyed doing that very much, but it's also great to be coming back to Berkeley to try to make some of those connections between academia and real-world activity. And it's just so exciting to see what's going on in this community around these issues. So I'm going to be talking about, we had produce to the people, and I'm going to be talking about people to production to policy. So kind of making that link. We often hear about farm to fork, and I'm trying to make the connections of fork to farm, but also addressing other issues beyond that. I also wanted to mention that our tagline at the Berkeley Food Institute is cultivating diversity, justice, resilience, and health. So that's we're really trying to encompass all dimensions of what some people call sustainability, but we really wanted to be really clear about what sustainability means for our institute and to embrace many different dimensions of sustainability. So what I want to talk about is this cliche. I mean, the topic of this particular session is on local to global or global to local. And Dr. Mehring gave a great example of how Kaiser is working at the local level, but also taking it to a broader national level. And I think it's a fantastic example of how hospitals and institutions can begin to incorporate healthy food and connecting to healthy farming systems. So I wanted to talk about this issue of there's so many local actions going on, and really I think we have to ask ourselves what is working. And all the speakers today have addressed these issues from various ways, and there's so many things that need to be done. And part of the question that we're trying to address also at the Berkeley Food Institute is how can these local actions really help contribute to broader transformation and really expand, not only scale up, but help, you might call replicate or get more opportunities for really making changes of the type that Marion Nestle talked about this morning and others have talked about. But food can be a catalyst. It really is bringing people together, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to address really complex political and economic challenges. So again, as I mentioned, I think the idea we hear a lot is farm to fork, and this whole movement is just amazing how many initiatives have sprouted up around the United States and internationally to really connect people with their produce, with their production systems, and to have people better understand how their food is produced and how they can access that local production. So the thing that I think is also really important is people are attempting to make connections to these broader institutions, policy, economy and markets, also, of course, understanding the land and ecosystems, the threat of climate change. So there's really an all-encompassing efforts at so many levels to address the challenges that we face in our food and agriculture systems. And it really is hard to distinguish which are the most important elements. And then in many ways, you can't say there's any single answer by any means. But the landscape that we see here is, as I've said, is just multiple initiatives. And you might call those seeds all over the place that are very sometimes disperse. But there's a kind of random landscape arrangement here that I did that on purpose because it really does, that's not easily put into a box or into a system, but there are lots and lots of activities going on. And I'm sure I've left out things here from that all of you are working on, some of you may be working on, but really, it ranges from grassroots efforts that involve labor movements, farmers markets, consumer campaigns, CSA, alternative market models. We also have hospital initiatives like we've heard about. There's just really a whole array of really exciting activities. And I have to say that for me, and I think a lot of us who've been working on these issues for many years, it's exciting to see this movement because, going back 25 or 30 years, it was a huge struggle to even get to people to pay attention to organic and sustainable agriculture. So when I was applying to graduate school, there was not a single program in the whole United States on sustainable agriculture. So I had to go abroad to look for crafting my own major where I could try to bring together my interests in development and environment, poverty, and agriculture, because there just really wasn't that kind of opportunity here. I mean, there are people like Miguel Altieri and others teaching agroecology, but it was within particular departments, and of course researching agroecology. But anyway, so we've come a long way, and examples in alternative marketing, we have just a really huge rise in community-supported agricultures, estimated over 13,000 in North America alone. Farmers markets were just mentioned, estimated over 8,000 nationwide, and these reach many thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. We have another example is all the educational programs. As I mentioned, it's just phenomenal to see this incredible increase of school gardens. And I just actually met a person last night who runs an organization called Farm to School. Actually, that's a national Farm to School organization. And the most recent estimates they've come up with, partly in collaboration with USDA, is over 35,000 farm to school programs. And that's, quite incredible considering that, just a few years ago, there weren't very many of these at all. And of course, here in Berkeley is one of the cradles of innovation and activity in farm to school programs with Alice Waters and, all the work that the Community Alliance with Family Farms have done. And anyway, it's just really incredible how this has taken off. And part of that has happened through policy change, like in California. So, and also, like I say, hundreds of programs in education, and then also enormous increase. There's not even it's really hard to track the acreage of urban farming operations and community gardens. If somebody has some figures on that, I'd love to see it, but it's really hard to measure. And then, of course, the actual production side. When we heard about the terrible problems with overuse of agrochemicals, unsustainable monocultural systems, there are also lots and lots of efforts to develop alternatives. And I personally enjoyed the experience of working on that. It's a huge challenge in some ways, but there's also more and more interest on the part of many producers to make a difference and to make changes, and recognizing that utilizing different practices that are in harmony with the natural resources, that are using agroecological principles, can make good economic sense as well as provide healthy food for society. But there's still a lot of work to do, that's for sure. We, of course, know about food sovereignty initiatives, which are particularly strong in Latin America, and many, many more examples, so I'm not going to go into those. But the problem, and I alluded to this earlier, is that a lot of these efforts are small and disconnected compared to the powerful forces that we heard about this morning that Marion Nessel so eloquently describes and shows visuals about the power of advertising and of political economic structures, and it creates this huge constraint for continuing this movement. And so what I wanted to lead to is, we're facing this huge challenge in terms of the overwhelming magnitude and complexity. And one of the advantages of speaking at this point is that I can skim through some of these slides because other people have already talked about this, including both Marion and Leah. But, it really is, in many ways, obesity and hunger are flip sides of the same coin. But we face this, hunger and obesity are, and the other thing that hasn't been talked about too much is extreme waste. The amount of food wasted in our society, particularly in the United States, is absolutely phenomenal. And when you start looking at the whole supply chain, what is entailed with food waste, it's really, really incredible, given the fact that we also have such hunger problems. And then, extreme want, extreme stress that's aggravated by climate change. And the important point here is, again, you've seen these maps. All this is a skewed distribution of hunger at global and local levels, as well as a skewed distribution of obesity. So it's not a universal issue. You have concentrations, just as other speakers have described. And again, these similar roots: poverty, inequities in income levels, access to healthy food, access to information. It's pretty endemic in our system that we're facing these big challenges. On top of the fact that we have unsustainable patterns of agricultural production and consumption, political and economic barriers, and ecological constraints. So a lot going on. And again, I don't need to really go into this in any more depth except for to say that we know that the concentration of the food system is at all levels, from seed to consumer retailers. And the estimated level of concentration, at least from Foodopoly a couple of years ago, is that 20 food corporations produce most of the food eaten by Americans, even organic brands. So, we have this huge concentration, which creates big barriers and challenges to all the movements, in spite of the positive steps. And one of the recent things that I discovered by reading some more on the World Food Prize, many of you know about the World Food Prize and recent recipients of that. And even the World Food Prize funding is very much controlled by particular corporations and interests, which is pretty disconcerting in some ways. I mean, there are some positive elements here that we have the Gates Foundation that is involved, or foundations are involved, but there's also a lot of corporate interests in there. And what does that mean for recognizing changes in our food system? So what I wanted to get here is how can we really address the roots of the problem in a more effective way? And we need all of the initiatives that are going on here together, I think. I mean, I'm not trying to underplay the value of these many seeds of change throughout the whole food system. But I also wanted to bring up this which is actually interesting. It's similar to the framework that Marion Nessel presented this morning, which I had not seen before from the UN from many years ago. But this puts it sort of upside down, saying what can contribute to this positive change in a more effective way. And I have used a sort of political ecology framework going back to my academic days that I feel is really helpful to look at technology change or system change. And when you're looking at, there's feedback loops, of course. But I really do think that you have to understand that we all have to understand how change is affected by the broader economic system and political system that we've already talked about. So I think one of the important things here is that we need to get more collective movements, that we need to establish more relationships that can broaden from individual initiatives to more collective action, to more united initiatives that can really make have a stronger impact on political change. So back to my diagram of all the seeds. I mean, it's not easy to do this. It's easier said than done. But that is one thing that we are trying to work on with the Berkeley Food Institute, is to create more connections. And I think it's imperative for those of us who are in this movement. Now, of course, there's understandably competition for resources among foundations and others. But it's really important, I think, for us to continue to build this movement through collective action and finding more alliances between all of them. I could put arrows all over the place for here. So So what I wanted to also just finish up with here is that you have heard some about the Berkeley Food Institute. We're very new, but one of the main ideas is that we're trying to work on this building of linkages to stakeholders to build this kind of transformation of the food system. Again, we're just one of many actors, but acting as a hub of sorts, really to connect mainly researchers and educators to policymakers and practitioners in the food system. And so that really means a whole array of players. And, so seeking those collaborations and finding those strategically is, there's a whole world of opportunity. And we can't do it all, but we're at least trying to begin this effort to make better connections and leverage the great work that's going on here at Berkeley, because there are such wonderful examples of and efforts for doing, just incredible research, but to use that research and to enable more cross-disciplinary research, but also to take it to policymakers in an effective way will be part of our challenge and our opportunity. And so also hopefully facilitating connections between the different groups will be part of our effort. And having had some experience myself with both policy, public sector, private sector, and lots of NGO actors, I'm hoping to help do that, but we need all of you to provide some of those connections as well. And we also are really aiming internally at UC Berkeley to facilitate and build those cross-disciplinary, not interdisciplinary, but cross-disciplinary linkages to create systems approaches to addressing complex problems. So again, as I mentioned, we really consist of many units. Right now, there's opportunity probably for more units to join, or schools to join our efforts. But right now, there's five involved. So, and the students and community, of course, are very much involved in this process, and students in community in each one of these areas. So I'm sure all of you could provide many other examples of where people are building these types of alternatives and building these effective linkages. I was just talking with people earlier today about these efforts to gain more what was described as collective impact. And I had not actually heard that term used, but because I was talking about collective action, but really to make these linkages. And it takes a whole lot of people and strengthening our efforts through unity. And of course, I have to bring Marian here. We need lots of Marians, lots and lots of Marians. And, I've got to go. Also, my last little piece here is action that can affect, united, beyond the voting, which is so important, as she said, part of political action, but doing that in a unified way to work together towards making changes. So with that, I'll stop, and I guess we'll pass on to you. Thank you very much.